Hi, I'm Max Rasega from BSTN, here with Heather Moran and Savannah White to talk about Miss Moran's book, Biology Help for the Virtual Weary Student, during Right to Read Week. Thank you both for joining me.
Hi, Max. Nice to be here.
So the first question I want to ask you, Miss Moran, is what made you decide to write this book?
Well, in the spring of last year, I was worried about my virtual students and how to get lectures across to them, and just reading a lot of textbooks is hard. And I was posting a lot of videos, and I had a student say, Miss Moran, if a video is over 6 minutes long, I'm not watching it. And yeah, 6 minutes. So I said, I was going to put my lectures on tape, but who wants to watch a video of someone talking for a half hour? So I thought maybe if I wrote down the lectures, that would help out for those who are at home learning.
So I'm guessing that's what inspired you to write it?
That's what inspired me to write the book. I had some friends who had kids that were going to other schools, Poland, Canfield, and they said, can you send me those stories that you're using, because we're here with a textbook and a workbook, but we don't understand it. We know that the answer is mitosis, but we don't know what that means, and can you write down these stories for us? So as I started writing them and posting it for my virtual students to use, then I started thinking, well, maybe we should put these all in one spot. And at first it was just for my students or for my virtual students. But then I thought, let's do it. Let's publish it.
I like that. Well, how long would you say it took you to write it?
All right, so I started last summer, and I would set my timer for, you know how we were, no schedule whatsoever. But I said, okay, I'm not going to get up at 5 in the morning, but I'm going to get up by 8 or 9. And I usually set the alarm for between 10 and 11. I said I'm going to write 1 hour every day. And some days I was so in the middle of a lecture that I would just shut off the alarm and keep writing. So I ended up writing 2 or 3 hours. And some days trying to get an hour, I was oh, I really just don't feel like that. But I think that was the thing that really helped me, was setting an alarm and just saying I'm just going to grind out this hour as much as I can.
Okay. How did you initially get involved into the project, Savannah?
Mrs. Moran asked the digital art teachers who they recommended, and they recommended me. So then I got in contact with her through them.
Okay. And then, Miss Moran, how'd you go about getting the book published and all?
All right, well, it's a lot different than I thought it would be, because I published it on Amazon, and what they do now is you can upload a book in the graphics, and you have to have it edited, you have to have it in a certain format. But Amazon actually, instead of the old days where they would print thousands of copies and they would be in your garage and you would be trying to sell them to people, Amazon prints them to order. So if you ordered 5 books tonight, Amazon prints 5 books tonight and sends them out to you in the morning. And so Amazon always has the file for this book. And anyone can really do this. They have the file for your book, and if somebody orders 5 copies or if somebody orders 500 copies, they print them as soon as they order them and ship them out the next day. So there's no boxes of books hanging around my dining room or anything like that. It's just all, and then of course they have the Kindle format too, so that's how it works nowadays.
Was there anything that came unexpectedly to you throughout the process, hiccups or anything that you weren't expecting to happen?
I thought the hardest part would be writing the book. That wasn't hard for me because I know the content and I know what I wanted to say. And I had the format. It wasn't like I was writing fiction where I had to come up with a story and a plot. I knew what I wanted to say. The hard part for me was I didn't know anything about editing. I didn't know anything about formatting, and I didn't know anything about marketing. So marketing, we all think we'll go on a book tour and go to Barnes & Noble and do a book signing. And you could do that, but not, first of all, in the COVID age. And second of all, that's not really where the students are. Where you guys are is Amazon, which I've been advertising on Amazon and Facebook and Instagram. And now I'm trying to learn TikTok. Because as you know, you guys are not, my demographic is 13 through 17-year-olds and maybe into college age kids if they need a little review, something a little more friendly. The textbooks out there are this thick. I call that the anti-textbook. It's just a friendly sit down to remind you of the basics. But yeah, so now that's my goal for the summer, is to learn TikTok marketing. and see how that goes.
There you go.
Yeah.
I like the whole anti-textbook term for that.
Yeah, well, it's not quite as heavy as a textbook either.
Savannah, so what was your initial reaction to the thought of possibly becoming a published illustrator?
Oh, I was really excited. It sounded like a lot of fun, and I just thought that would be something cool to do.
Did you ever think that it would be something you always wanted to do?
I consider it more as a hobby. It wouldn't be something I would want to do
Okay,
every
and then
day, but
how did you choose your illustration style for the book?
most of them are graphs or tables, so I kind of just had to remake those for the most part.
And how many attempts per se do you think it took you to get to your final pictures?
A couple of them were pretty hard, like the periodic table. That took me a couple of days. But overall, making them was pretty easy. They were just pretty time consuming.
And Miss Moran, you, as Savannah said, you went to the art teachers and stuff and asked for your students. Did she used to be a student of yours?
I never had Savannah in class for biology. She had Mr. D'Angelo for biology, but he's a great teacher, so she did a really good job.
Well, did you like working with her at least?
I really like working with Savannah. We did most everything we were doing was in the fall, and so we were trying to keep distance as much as possible. So I gave her all the graphics, and then she would send me back 7 or 8 every once in a while, and it worked out really well.
Yeah, I was just about to say, how'd you collaborate? Was it just
Yeah.
all strictly back and forth online stuff, or did
Yeah,
you
it was
ever
mostly
meet up?
emails.
Mhm.
Yeah, we would just email each other.
Okay. Miss Moran, I mean, since you just wrote a book, did you have any author inspiration when you were writing, or did it just all come from your head?
I wrote my lectures, and as you guys know, I've been doing this for 26 years, so it came pretty easy as far as the content. I read all the time. I read nonfiction and I read fiction. My favorite is historical fiction, believe it or not. Everyone thinks it should be science fiction, she's a science, but it's not really. I spend my whole day doing science, and I've done that for my whole career. And so usually when I want to unwind, I'll read historical fiction. I like Lisa C. and Ken Follett, and I read a lot of nonfiction as well.
I like that. Savannah, did you run into any problems or anything while you were trying to write, to illustrate?
Honestly, not really. It went pretty smoothly. Didn't have any errors or anything.
Is it something that you would consider to do again?
Yeah, it was very fun.
And do you have any aspirations, become an illustrator or anything, or do you have anything else you want to do?
I want to be a teacher, so I feel like that goes pretty hand in hand. Actually, it'll help me out.
And then for your illustrating style, do you have any artists that help inspire you in the way that you draw?
Not really, to be honest, because it's all on the computer, so it's kind of just whatever you're feeling works.
Miss Moran, what advice would you give to the students who are either interested in writing a book or just anything around those lines?
I would say it's easier now to write a book and get a book published than I could have ever imagined. But there's a lot involved, so if you don't want to actually write, I got the help of editors. My daughter helped me edit. I had some friends that edited for me, and then I had somebody completely out of the field edit just to make sure it was okay. I had some of the biology teachers and science teachers up here read for content for me, and formatting. I never realized how important formatting was. So yeah, you could write, you could publish, and if you're waiting, you don't have to get a degree in something, and then if you have a great story that you want to write, whether it's a children's story or an illustration, do it. All of us say oh, I should write this down, I should write a book. I always say I should write a children's story. It's not that hard. You could do it.
Do you have any tips for people to get started? Would you recommend how you would sit down and set an alarm for an hour, or is there anything along those lines you would recommend?
I think anything like that. That really worked for me. I said, I'm going to write this hour. And like I said, sometimes at the end of the hour, I was involved, and then I just kept going. But at least I knew I'd have an hour a day. And yeah, you could get a lot of good things done if you just do little by little.
And then the same type of question to you, Savannah. What advice would you give to any students who want to illustrate?
Take all the classes here. I took my first digital class my sophomore year, and I'm taking the last one this year. So I think that really helps, getting taught by the teachers who do this every day. Makes you have more of an understanding.
And are there any tips you would give to students? Like, did you ever feel like at the start it was just too difficult and you wanted to give up or anything? Or do you feel like in the end it's easier if you just get going and then find your way?
Yeah, I think if you just start, I mean, you could definitely do it. It's tricky using like Photoshop and Illustrator, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually quite easy.
Miss Moran, I just wanted to ask again, when you were writing, just like how I had just asked her, did you ever feel like there was like stressful moments or maybe even when you didn't feel like you could keep going, or was you just made it all the way through?
There were times when I was pretty much finished with the book. I at first thought there would be 18 stories, and then I cut it down to 17 stories. I did important moments in animals, and then I didn't do important moments in plants. I just wasn't inspired to write the plant one, so I didn't. And there were times when I'd read it over and say, like, that's really good. And then there were other times when I would read it over, maybe the same exact story, and say, like, that is ridiculous. Like, this is stupid. This isn't flowing right. I'm very frustrated with the whole thing. And I think that's pretty typical of any project, you know, like you put it out there and sometimes you're like, yeah, this is good. I feel good about this. And then some days it was like, oh, this is horrible. I don't know what I'm doing. But you just keep, you know, I was committed to it. So I said, oh, this is something I said I was going to do, and I'm going to do it and see it through. And I'm glad I did.
So do you feel like through all the process of writing and then getting it published and everything, do you feel like you could eventually write another one?
I feel like I could, sure, maybe. I don't know what it would be, if it would be like environmental help for the virtual weary student, or if we would do more with biology, because that's the basics. That's like in a basic, like what the end of course class test would be covering and standardized tests would be covering. But as you know from class, we go off onto like birds and reptiles and geology, and so there's a lot of other things that we could talk about, but yeah, who knows?
And do you think you would bring Savannah back in to illustrate that one?
Absolutely, she did a great job. That was one of the things, like, I used Google image search just like we all do, and then I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can use these images. And by the time I went through all that, I'd forgotten where I got the images, and so I said, it's just to keep it as proper as possible, we're gonna just take out all the images, and that's where Savannah came in and redid them all for us.
Is there anything else that either of you want to add?
It was great working with her.
Yeah, it was great working with you.
Well, I'd like to thank both of you for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Max.
That's all for me today. From BSTN, I'm Max Resega. Have a great day, Spartans.